Well, this weekend, we're focusing on those who were robbed through the VBS Bank Heist. Our reporter, Rofhiwa Madzena, is in Thohoyandou speaking to those affected. Many lost their life savings to greedy, rich executives. Let's cross to Rofhiwa now live. So, Rofhiwa, of course, you've been speaking to people over the past 2 days. What are their stories? What are they saying to you?
Shahan, as you've just said at the end of your intro there, they lost everything to greedy people over the 3 years that the scandal had unfolded. So I spoke to a few people, a lot of them elderly folk who had put their life savings in VBS. One, for example, had about 600,000 Rand in life savings that he was going to use when he retired. That money was lost, and the sad thing about it now is this retired man lives on his own mother's pension because he doesn't have a job and he can't afford to take care of himself or his young children. Other people, one of them who was perfectly healthy, the day he found out that he had lost his money, his blood pressure shot up. He even got sick with diabetes and is now blind in one eye. He says his health has deteriorated significantly over the last 3 years since the scandal happened, and it's difficult for him to go on with his life. In fact, Shahan, when we interviewed him earlier today, he was parked at a mall, and he says he just parks there every day and watches cars driving past. I think it's one way that he tries to deal with the situation that unfolded. Just sits there in his car and just watches cars driving by daily. There's another business owner who used to have a logistics business, 60 taxis and buses. He's unable to use any of those now because all of them needed maintenance, something that the money was used for, and he can no longer do any of the maintenance with money because he just doesn't have it anymore because he lost it all. And then I was supposed to have a guest this afternoon, Shahan, Mr. Colin. And he used to work at VBS. We really wanted to get into insights of, did the workers at VBS have any inkling of what was happening when it was happening? Of course, he says they were kept in the dark, and we're going to interview him about what he did know. In fact, right behind me, just beyond that wall, is where he runs a business now. So he got fired, or he lost his job because of the looting that happened. And now, just beyond that wall there, he buys meat for a living. And it's quite sad because of the curfew. He says most of the business comes in after 10 p.m. when people have had quite a bit to drink and they're hungry and they're looking for some meat. But because of COVID, he can't bribe beyond a certain time. So some really, really tragic stories that have come through, Shahan, over the last 2 days about the impact that greed has had on ordinary people.
It really is sad to hear how people are now struggling, trying to make money because of what happened to their life savings. So let's put it into context. And we're not just talking about businesses here, right? We're talking about people who are also trying to invest their money or even just leave their money in that bank, hoping to take it out when they retire. How much money are we talking?
There was one gentleman, Mr. Michael, who had saved over 400,000. He was running a business but was planning to hand that over to his children and retire with the savings that he had made. So he had 400,000 that he had put away for his retirement because he obviously didn't have a pension fund as he was a self-employed man. He lost that money. Shahan, an over 60-year-old man now, is being forced to drive a taxi Sunday to Sunday. We were actually with him this afternoon at the taxi rank where he works while we were waiting with him, we were waiting for his taxi to be loaded. That's what he does for a living. He says he makes about 500 Rand a day. And he says it's tough because he still has children that go to school, university, and he still has to make sure that his children are surviving in Joburg where they are. But it's heartbreaking that a man who was prepared for retirement has now had to resort to driving a taxi so that he can get by. Another gentleman, he invested since the beginning of the bank, or since the start of the bank. He lost over 7 million Rand, Shahan, 7 million Rand his entire life was wiped away with the greed of these people. The scandal unfolded and he lost everything that he had worked for. He almost was in tears when he was telling me this afternoon that I don't even have a cent to my name, you know. That's very painful. It's very painful. And then another man lost about 1.3 million, and then he had 600,000 rand in shares at the bank, so he lost almost 2 million in savings. I mean, so this is not chump change. These are people's livelihoods, Shahan, people's livelihoods that have been lost.
Yeah, and people who work so hard to try to plan for a better future. Meanwhile, those accused of actually looting this bank, we're still seeing the cases drag on without any justice. So while that happens, Rofhiwa, is there any chance of people getting their money back or even a part of what they invested in that bank?
So on the justice part that you've just mentioned, Shahan, some assets of those who've been implicated have been seized. That has turned into money that's been collected by the curator or the liquidator. The interesting thing here, Shahan, is that there is money that's coming in. So you will understand that there were people that had taken out vehicle asset finance, home loans, or other personal loans with the banks. There would have been corporates that that took out loans with the bank when it was operational, and all these people or corporates still have to repay those debt obligations because they signed a contract. Otherwise, the curator or the liquidator can take away those assets if the people are not paying their installments and so. So there's still money coming in. It would be interesting to hear from the curator or the liquidator how much money they have collected so far and why those monies are not being distributed to the people who've been waiting for now over 3 years for those monies, Shahan. So a lot of them are not hopeful, even though promises have been made that there is a claims process that is underway, and people were invited to a hotel in Venda, Koroni, to come sign some documents to make their claims as to how much they lost, and those monies would be paid back to him. But this happened 4 months ago. That signing of claims and making claims happened 4 months ago. All of these people say they've heard nothing since then. So the big question is, all these monies that are still being collected, people that are still having to meet their debt obligations, where are they going? What is happening? And we're just going to need to get clarity from the liquidators at a later stage, Shahan.
Yep. All right. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. Rofhiwa Madzena, of course, in Thohoyandou, covering that story for us. It's always important to look back at people who are affected by corruption and fraud, because these are human beings who have lost everything due to the greed of certain individuals.